I took a lot of initiative for myself. Like as a senior in high school, I saw this list of books that you should have read before you go to college, right? It's all these classics. And I was on college track. I had, British literature, American literature, I was on the college track, but still there was this list of 100 books, and I hadn't read like 50 of them or something, 50 or 60 of them. And so I just kind of took it upon myself then to just catch up and read these quote unquote classics. But there were no Black authors on there. Zora Neale Hurston wasn't on there. Her rediscovery had been just happening, like 76 with Alice Walker. So that would have been a really progressive list just 4 years later after people had quote unquote rediscovered her. But there could have been Ralph Ellison, there could have been Frederick Douglass, there could have been Richard Wright, there could have been Amiri Baraka. I mean, there's a whole list of people that could have been on that list.
The 4th of July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice, I must mourn. To drag a man in fetters into this grand, illuminated temple of liberty and call upon him to join you in joyous anthems were inhuman mockery and sacrilegious irony. Do you mean, citizens, to mock me?
See, we know this place they call freedom, but we call it policy that puts kids on corners more than in classrooms, because in this so-called post-racial society, a Black female college professor can get pulled over by 2 officers at 2 a.m. after having coffee, talking education and politicking with the city's Black mayor for expired registration, even though the tags on the back of her car were clearly color-coded to show license plate to be legal. Her skin was the color that has been historically coded as evil. So illegal or not, they stopped me. And in that moment, I was reminded that the only thing post-racial or after race in this society are the lines of the boxes that draw the stay in your place borders for anyone like me.
I write a lot about identity and sort of intersectionality of identity. So, and as it crosses boundaries with history and culture and social justice issues. So I write a lot about race. I write a lot about gender identity and what happens to women and girls. I also write about how those things, how race is impacted by history and how race is impacted by culture and cultural ideas and views of people. And the current manuscript that I just finished, that's coming out in December, is a manuscript called Ligatures, and it has to do with race and police violence against Black people, and the sort of systematic culture that has to be present in order for those horrible things to happen. And so it goes back to sort of this historical view of how we value people in society, and how when we value more people, some people over others, that the responses to the people that we value less become automatic. That police aren't bad, but we are in a society that creates reactions rather than relationships.
the African American and Latino writers, it's important that they be represented. I appreciate that this project is doing that because my experience now, obviously I was in school quite a while ago, but I don't think we read any Latino or African American writers. We just didn't. And I know my children, I think back on their experience in school, I don't recall them coming home having read any of these writers, maybe Harriet Beecher Stowe, Uncle Tom's Cabin, but other than that, I don't think any of those authors were read in school. They're reading a lot of English, which may be the heritage of my children, but that's not the heritage of our country. We have a much more diverse nation, and I think that we need to represent that in our literature and in our children's education. And if the public schools aren't up to speed on that yet, then good for organizations like this for filling in the gap.
I think exposing everybody to this means that people get to see what society really looks like. They get to see everybody in society, right?
We tend to think it doesn't impact us, we don't need it, therefore I'm above that, or it's not worth my time. So just trying to get people to, you know, drop some of maybe their guard in terms of what they will consider worthy of their, you know, attention, of their education. So.
I think the best aspect about the program was the opportunity for kids to not only engage with writers of all different ethnicities and ones that, you know, people who look like them and who are talking about ideas that they're forming and seeing in the media and kind of grappling with themselves, but also the opportunity to have a space for them to talk about it with others.
I think the current times that we're living in right now and what, you know, the whole United States and Kalamazoo community is exposed to on the news in different situations of racial and ethnic minority groups, I think it's an important time to continue to talk about and celebrate differences. And it's not a time to negate any other profound work such as Robert Frost, who have made great contributions to the literature. It's about adding. It's about celebrating other individuals and celebrating literature and literacy as a whole.
I was taught a particular canon of literature, and I had to find the writers that I found when I was in college. I ended up, my master's thesis was on the theme of freedom in Black women's writing from slavery to present, and there was no teacher at Central Michigan University in the English department that could teach that class for me. So I had to create a class, and my chair of my committee said that they were teaching the class so we could have the class, and I taught the class. So I was teaching myself, and teaching other people myself as I was learning it myself.
Our primary objective with the Great Writers Project was to really respond to a call that came, quite frankly, from young people. Our young people who kept saying over and over again, we don't see ourselves in the curriculum, we don't see ourselves in these textbooks, we don't see ourselves in our classrooms or our hallways in the ways that we know is real.
I've never really got taught any writers that are specifically African American or Hispanic, so it just really fascinated me, wanting to learn things like that. in school, we only learned about Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. There wasn't a wide representation of any Black authors that we read about, so that's why we wanted to get the Great Writers Project going, just so that we can get more familiar with Black authors and other authors' writings and like books and things like that, because they're not taught in school.
I wanted to do something with writing and African American literature and a Latin or Latino literature, just trying to, I guess, know more about it and get more other teens to know about it.
In part, it started well before the actual project or even the writing of the grant. The impetus for the project was really working with young people at FIRE and realizing, well, not just realizing, but reinforcing again that there weren't enough people of color writers that they were having the opportunity to read and engage with in the school system. And so there are a lot of really great young people at FIRE that really wanted to know more about the writers that reflected who they are. And so, you know, the whole project is really about identity and connecting, and really falls in line so much with the creative justice model at FIRE. And so we were talking to the young people. They wanted to see more people reflected. We also had been talking to this school superintendent quite a bit, and wanting to work on a project together. So this seemed to be a great fit. So once the grant opportunity came up and we really started talking about what does that look like, we ultimately then met with different faculty and talked about the writers that we really felt like we loved and helped shape our identity as women of color. And so we got together and put our heads together around some of those writers. So some of the poets, some of the essayists, some of the novelists, and some of the really sort of social justice advocates that we'd seen throughout our history, or the history of people of color in the United States. And so we picked those writers that really reflected identity through difficulty, through colonization, through marginalization, and how the writing helped to sustain people and to promote identity. And so when we met with the teachers then, we shared some of the writers that we really loved and we picked for the project. And then we sat together over a series of meetings with the final teachers that really wanted to be involved. And really just, we all went away and read the pieces, and then we came back and we talked about them, how they would fit for the young people, what ages they fit for. And then we started to talk about the literature and dig into it, and how we connected to it, and then develop the curriculum from there. So I grew up in a small town in Ohio that was predominantly European American, really rural Ohio, coal mining and farms basically. But my grandmother was a librarian. And I remember, I either was outside all the time or in the library all the time. There was this great chair that I loved, and I remember going and just curling up in that chair with a book, right? But at the same time, there were very few writers that I saw myself in fully. So, for example, I would read Judy Blume like almost every other girl at the time, even though I was a big tomboy. But I would also read Judy Blume and try to find these ways of connecting as a girl, right? But I couldn't connect as a Black girl. I couldn't connect my race to my readings so much, except for one book that I had that was a collection of poetry that my great-grandmother gave me. But so I remember when I went to college and connecting for the first time with people like Zora Neale Hurston and people like James Baldwin, who I'm still continually connecting with. And what they did, they helped me know that I was okay, that whatever I was feeling, whoever I was, that one, as a Black person, I belonged, in this world and in this country. As a woman, I belonged in this world and in this country. My gender identity, my sexuality, all of those things, all of those writers showed me that I belonged and that I was okay, and in some cases better than okay, being who I am. And so for me, I mean, that's why I write and that's why I read. And so each of those writers, Sandra Cisneros, each of those writers gave me a little bit of a piece of myself. And so like if I think about myself as a puzzle, and you know, a puzzle, and I sort of cut out those pieces. I don't know what the shapes would be, but if I saw myself as a puzzle before with all the pieces not quite connected, each of those writers would be, when I read that person, okay, I could pick up this piece and put it here, or I could pick up this piece and put it here, or I could pick up this piece and put it here. They really helped me to piece together my identity in ways that made me whole.
The material, the reading material, was really all centered on those themes that then we felt would be really great themes for young people and you know, for adults to think about and to use as a lens to be able to understand other literature, to be able to understand their lives, and to be able to understand the world around them and how they intersect. Because once you have those tools of analysis, then you can bring those tools of analysis to just about everything.
Once I got kind of familiar with the program goals, I was really excited to see that it would allow me to become more familiar with authors who aren't necessarily always part of our curriculum. I learned a lot from the other teachers and professors and everyone who was working with the project. And it has definitely helped me then integrate some of that into my classroom just outside of the project goals. I think it is so important to give kids a diversity of literature. So much of what is in the curriculum is coming from the same kind of voices. For instance, the British literature curriculum in Kalamazoo Public Schools focuses almost exclusively on, you know, dead white male authors. There is some diversity, but only in the second portion of the class, and it's also, you know, they're linking text, they're optional. They shouldn't be optional. Students should have exposure to more than just, you know, the key African American or Latino writers. It shouldn't just be that they can only name Martin Luther King Jr. They should be able to name multiple people, especially considering the diversity of our community. The diversity of our literature should reflect that.
Seeing an author who comes from your similar background, who looks like you and have a connection there, and saying, wow, they're doing this, they're writing about this, can I do this? And yes, I can.
There's like a poem by Maya Angelou about like Black women and how to kind of like embrace that and be positive with it and not really feel any shame towards it, and that has really like impacted me a lot.
Being able to open up your literature book or walk into an English class or an after-school program and hear about more than just Robert Frost is really important because, one, I mean, love Robert Frost, he's great, but every student has already read that. Every student has been exposed to him. Every student has read some of these dead white guys and dead white women that end up in these books. And I think students deserve something new. They deserve a fresh curriculum, and they deserve a curriculum that represents them. But more than that, they deserve a curriculum that goes beyond the representation of themselves.
Students found that Kalamazoo and their schools were a diverse place for learning, which is great. That they're aware of that and they can recognize the diversity and see it. And then we also found that students were not really sure whether they knew or understood really what racial equity was about, or could recognize some significant social justice movements, but they did respond in saying that it is important to talk about social justice and racial equity in the school system.
It's important because it helps people find a better understanding of things and be able to possibly like find an experience they have that connects to it.
So with different books, people can have different opinions and they can see the world in a different perspective.
What is Zora Neale Hurston saying? What are the possibilities for a just world and the impossibilities in that story?
Well, first of all, dude was angry for like, he definitely had a reason to be angry, but I feel like when you hold anger and like the end result, like his heart like exploded or whatever because he was so angry. And I feel like holding anger, even though he definitely had a reason to be angry, like holding anger in could have a negative effect on you. And like some of the things that he did, like abuse and all those are not okay. So him being angry hurt other people, so it can cause them to possibly be angry. So just like him like trying to get like revenge, maybe if that's the word, it ended in a downfall because he was affecting everyone around him also.
I definitely think the kids found the opportunity to discuss some of these issues valuable, especially in a place in school. The first meeting I had with a few other students afterward, when we were kind of just wrapping up, I was encouraging them to invite their friends to come as well. One of the girls actually said, why don't we do this in class? We should be talking about these same things in classes. I'm glad to have, an opportunity to talk about it. I think too, knowing that they have someone at the school or teachers at the school who care about these issues makes them more comfortable maybe then to talk about them in other contexts in class or bring them up. One conversation I had with a student regarding, it was the James Baldwin piece, White Man's Guilt. We just continued to go back and forth into so many different complex issues. And I felt like I learned a lot as well from the students, being just more aware and hearing their perspectives. We discussed a lot how the literature relates to what's going on today. So many of them were really blown away by the parallels between things that authors were talking about back in the 60s and things that are happening currently. And I think that was really valuable for the kids to just have a place to talk about those things. And they really saw the value of it should be within the classroom as well, that this should be something that's done in schools. It shouldn't just be an after-school program. For them to make such comments like that, to me, shows that they get it and they are looking for that as well.
I think it's absolutely important to have writers of color who have been published, who have been acknowledged, whose words have been validated, because it validates yourself. I know for me, to be able to meet writers of color, to be able to read authors who had a shared experience of me, had the same kinds of experiences that I did, was really important in making sure that I understood and loved myself and knew that the experiences that I had were real, that they weren't made up things in my head, that I wasn't crazy, that, the media wasn't true about me, that these writers got to help me remember who I am, help me understand who I am, even help me ask the right questions of, what am I here for? What is my power? What can I do with my writing? How can I let my writing speak for not just myself, but the people who look like me or people who have a shared struggle as I do? So reading writers of color builds that empathy within me.
So I was talking about how these writers gave me pieces of myself. Well, when people read and then they get to write their own stories and the things that matter to them, then somebody else gets to pick that up later and maybe find a piece of their identity, right? So reading these great writers is only part of the piece of the puzzle, but writing something, putting something back, giving something back after you've been fed, putting something else on the table for other people, is revolutionary. I mean, it is the thing. It is the thing that changes people.
Our objective in the writing section was really to introduce writers to styles, strategies, themes, perspectives that then they might be able to modify for themselves, utilize for themselves, and to identify the degree to which those strategies worked or didn't work for them.
Trying to stay afloat with the dollar and a dream. It's the first of the month. I spent my last on gasoline. So tell me not to fiend for the fame and the fortune. They say cream get this money. I'm just trying to get my portion. But it's hard to rock crowds when they're busy throwing stones. These crabs in a barrel pull me down every time I think I'm on. Every time I think I'm right, they telling me that I'm wrong. Just trying to write what I feel in every one of my songs. But hold up. In a city like mine, small is the world when it's smaller in your mind. I'm shooting for the stars with the bow and arrow. We only get one life from the eye on the sparrow. That's church. But they don't feel me though. I feel like y'all don't feel me though. But this music moves my soul, and so I'm moving, y'all. A gift and a curse because I strive for something more. But if no one wants to fight, what are we fighting for? If no one wants to fight, I said, what are we fighting for? If no one wants to fight, I'm going to still fight for more. And try to numb up the pain that got me feeling insane. I've been here for a while. I took a break from the game. I started losing myself. Mirrors ain't look the same. Swear to God, at one point, I couldn't come out the frame. I couldn't come off the block. I couldn't come off the block. Couldn't keep it cool, calm, collect. Call phones had me on lock. It had me on lock.
Writing is powerful because it's a way that you can express yourself, a way that the words that you write are yours, and no one can take that from you. So I think that's why writing is so powerful.
As a poet, as I'm writing myself out of myself. So I'm able to create a mirror on the page. This is what's happening in my head. This is how my ideas are forming. This is what I think about myself, or what I think about how the world sees me. And so when you bring that mirror onto the page, then you can move that mirror around. So it's way different than just looking at your reflection. It's actually being able to change your reflection to make it represent more of who you want to be seen as.
I really like to write, but I'm really shy about it.
There's not a lot of ways to get people to listen to you, so writing is like one of the ways that you can get people to hear you.
Everybody has a voice. Everybody deserves to be heard, and everybody has something they need to say, and things can happen when they are not able to say those things, so they have to be able to talk to somebody.
I write about something that go on at school, like conflicts and stuff.
Basically, writing is my stress reliever, so I do write a lot about my life and what's going on.
I think it's more freeing than all the other subjects, especially in school, and it helps you kind of get to know yourself and know the people around you, and it can be used like a sort of therapy, and that's why sometimes I use it as, and that really helps a lot.
It's very important to offer students the opportunity to understand the issues that exist and have existed and will continue to persist in society, to show them, but then secondly to prepare them to be able to have a voice within that system. And unfortunately, a lot of them have those feelings, and they don't know what to do with them. They don't know the proper channels to express themselves. And I mean, in a city like this where everyone should be going to college because it's free, but where you see, the community college, not proudly presenting a 10% graduation rate a few years back, and where you see the jails steadily expanding, the juvenile system steadily expanding, when you see all of that and understand that supposedly we have the highest concentration of billionaires in Michigan, and then we additionally have the promise that we have some issues that do need to be addressed, and if you don't teach them in school, how to deal with that discontent through things like this, again, they're lost before they have a chance.
Make sure you fry enough for them too. Keep from running. Keep unregulated block parties. That's our neighborhood watch. Keep your missing dining room chair defending you and your grandmother's stoop so that there is no mistaking. You are still here. Okay, so that's a little bit about where I'm from, what's going on. I happen to be in a neighborhood that is not currently getting gentrified, so hooray for my hood. So we're gonna start off with, we're gonna dive into some articles today. I wanna give you a little bit of an idea of what's gonna happen.
I know when I'm working with students, a lot of times their parents are afraid of what they might write because they don't know how to deal with those things. So I would say to parents, to teachers, to peers who are watching somebody write or reading what somebody is write, some of those things might end up sounding scary, or they might be really new ideas that seem a little bit frightening. And I would just say that it's a piece of paper. It's a piece of paper. The words are extremely powerful. And so what you never want to do is take away a tool from a student, from a person. You don't want to take away anything that's going to give them the power to express themselves, even if that expression is a little bit frightening.
I was talking to him about how important it is to express yourself and find a way to get that anger out, because if you let it bottle up inside you, these feelings, bad things are going to happen.
So everything that we look at in terms of social justice, when we take away rights or we take away equality, somebody is attempting or bullying another group. So it's good that you can see these, and then you want to connect these individual experiences and then experiences that you see happen in our time. And when you do these writings today, you never know, 20, 30 years down the road, it could be used in a classroom, you know?
One of the things that we found is that the instructors, the teachers aren't teaching this stuff not because they don't want to, but because they don't know these people yet, right? Does that make sense? So there are a lot of teachers that, a lot of white teachers who, I mean, look at me, like I'm looking for my identity in literature. So they're looking for their identity in literature, right? And so if a person always wants to see themselves, and it's not a selfish thing, it's a natural thing, then that exposure to people of color writers is maybe not there yet, right?
I would say that I definitely found being involved in the program as a teacher very beneficial. The discussions I had with the other the teachers and leaders of the program at the beginning when we were planning everything out were fantastic. They really gave me a lot of resources to draw from, opened me up to authors I hadn't heard of, and just put things a bit more in perspective. It was great having those types of conversations with these really well-educated, knowledgeable people, with the focus of now we're going to go out there and try to give this to students and open their minds to some of these things as well.
Students kind of just were able to see that they're not alone in caring and maybe wanting to take part in making some change through writing and discussion about things that they see as problematic in society. So that was nice for them to be able to come together and not be alone in the struggle.
I hope what this project does is to make it even more clear about how we need to have this literature in our daily curriculum. It's great to have outside, programs to facilitate it, but if it's not incorporated into the fabric of the curriculum, then we're going to keep piecing together these projects. And our ultimate goal, I think, is really to make sure that when students go to school every day, they see themselves.
I think it's important to really push to get this added into the curriculum within KPS, because you have students who are in positions where they're not always able to stay after school for after school programs. What we also find is that students have responsibilities. You know, they have younger siblings that they have to go home to after school to take care of. For the high school students, some of them also work after school. So you have a lot of students who will miss out on an opportunity because of other, you know, family or so obligations.
Our young people have jobs and family and relationships and social stressors of racism, of homophobia, of sexism, of sexual assault, of absent community members, of poverty, of, you know, our young people face these things every day. They go to sleep with them and they wake up with them.
So infusing it into the curriculum, students will have to be in the class and will need to be engaged in it in that way. And I think that's a critical component, the access. Who will have access to this type of work, to create dialogue as they go throughout their school day. So having it in the classrooms, in the curriculum, I think would be more beneficial than maybe just an after-school program where not that many people can access this opportunity.
I think it would change culture because it would show that these people are important writers too, that they have something to say, that people of color are really relevant and deserve to be a part of a curriculum and a canon and a history, and you know, they deserve to be Pulitzer Prize winners too. They deserve to be read and taught and listened to and valued as part of the iconography of American culture. So in that way, when we put value on those writers, young people will put value on them, and not just those people then, not just those writers, but then they'll see people of color as valuable. And that in and of itself can change. I mean, it'll save lives, quite literally, right? When we don't see people as disposable or as less valuable, then we don't let bad things happen to them. And so, you know, particularly, it'll change school communities, it'll help people with identity, it'll help people to understand their communities and their culture and their history, but largely, in bigger ways, it'll save lives.
Money, you got lots of friends. They're crowding around your door. When they're gone and spending ends, they don't come no more. Trying to numb up the pain got me feeling insane. Been here for a while, took a break from the game. Started losing myself, mirrors ain't look the same. Swear to God at one point, couldn't come out the frame. Come out the block, couldn't come out the block. Couldn't keep it cool, calm, collect. Call phones had me on lock. 2 days felt like 2 weeks, 2 weeks too long to eat. The prolonged spit truth is this song, yeah, my mic sound vicious. Fancy flow, ambitious. Been had the torch, never conform to the mainstream. Rather rip my spleen clean out of my being. Rather see these young queens see out of the screen. But they can't for the life of them. Cause their life is akin to Instagram fans or something your handstands. You praying for life fans. And I can't say them all, can. But I can't listen to them. Cause they don't understand how we doing. I seen a kid the other day who was boozing. I said put it down and he said keep it moving. Slip the soul, flip the road, put myself inside the souls of a young brother who don't even know where he came from. History classes give him passes because he's reacting to the lacks of blacks in the passages. So all he want to do is turn up. All he want to do is turn up, can't even blame him. Crooked system got him prone to prison, a prone position on the same streets that he came from. Crooked system got him prone to prison, a prone position on the same streets that he came from.